let's go ahead and talk about the main features of Capcut from desktop. First things first, this is the interface that you're going to find once you download the app. You can go right here and click on Join Pro. And by clicking on Join Pro, you're not actually going to pay. You're just going to log in. I did it with my Google account, but you can also use email and password. Once you have done that, you're going to be able to access your spaces and you can upload projects with your timeline and you can re-download them from, for example, your phone, or also you can make them download from another team member if you have a team member, for example, another editor. And this is really useful and free, so I suggest you to do this. Anyway, we're now going to go back in the home and we're going to click on create project. By doing so, we are going to be greeted with this interface. Now, CapCut interface is really simple. To import your first footage, you just need to click right here on import and you're going to choose your footage, for example, this stock market, and I'll drag it in and I'll just double click it. And as you can see, I'll find myself here and I have my stock footage imported right here. If I want to import more footage, I'll go right here on import and, for example, bring this red one now. As you can see, I have 2 pieces of footage. You can simply browse through your device files until you find what you're looking for. Once you have your material here, you can go ahead and click on this plus to add it to your timeline. Or if you do not want to add it to your timeline like this, you can also drag it in just like so. So that you can also, instead of adding the plus and it's going to be, for example, here, I can just drag it wherever I want, for example, here in this exact spot. And this is the basics on how to import footage in a timeline. And as you can see right here in the player panel, you can see what's actually happening. So for example, right here, there is going to be a transition between the red and the green one, because as you can see, the clip changes right here. So this is how to import footage into a timeline, and then now you can see it in your player panel. You can delete your footage just by highlighting it and clicking backspace. Or if you want to cut it at a certain point, you can go, for example, right here. You highlight and you either go in the split tool and you split it exactly here, which I do not recommend. Or you can just go, for example, here and hit Control B. That's a shortcut to cut your footage. And as you can see, you can do this pretty quickly just by going over with your player panel and then clicking Control B. You can cut your footage as much as you'd like. Now let's go over and delete the stock footage and let's re-import this one. Now let's go quickly over these tools of the timeline because they're extremely important. So let's, for example, go ahead and drag in this guy talking. As you can see, it's a vertical clip, which is what we're going to use to make shorts. And let's go ahead and use this clip as an example to show some of the timeline features. So the first important thing about CapCut is that as you stack layers on top of each other, there is one track which is the most important out of them all, which is this one below, the lowest one. This is the main track, and the main track is the one that is below every other track. And this track has some special features. For example, if I go ahead and drag this footage like so, I can do it freely. Meanwhile, in the main track, I can't do this because I have what's called track magnet on. This is a safety measure to make sure that you do not leave any empty spaces in your main track. However, you can disable this if you want, and you can move your timeline freely in the main track. Also, if I go ahead and remove this from the main track, as you can see, there is this small thing which signals that this is the main track. Now, if I drag this back and I turn on the track magnet, as you can see, it's going to snap back to the start. This is really useful when you're cutting a lot. So for example, I want to cut this and I delete it. As you can see, it's going to snap right back at its place. Instead of, let's say I cut this small bit right here, I delete it, and as you can see, there is an empty space here. So keep that in mind while you're cutting. And then there is this other feature, which is auto snapping. So let's say I have auto snapping turned on and I'm trying to join these clips together. As you can see, if I do this now, it looks like they're together, but there is a small space in between. So I would have to zoom in every time and then close them manually like so. Meanwhile, with auto snapping, I can simply just go close, and as you can see, a blue line is going to create, which signals that the clips have been snapped together. As you can see, I just need to get a bit close and it's going to snap, which is perfect. I always suggest to have this on. And then there is turn off linkage, which is going to be useful once we drag effects and subtitles. So I'll show you how this works later. And then there is preview axis, which allows you to, as you can see, have this yellow line, which previews in the player panel what's happening. This is down to personal preference. I personally don't use this because I like to see what's exactly in my frame where I stop the player panel right here, and I don't like it to change as I move, but it's completely up to you. Try and play with it and see what works better for you. And then there is the zoom in and zoom out of the timeline, which you can use the shortcut of Control and your scroll wheel, as you can see, which is going to zoom in and zoom out. Also, something to keep in mind is that if you click on a layer and then you right click, you're going to have a bunch of features. So the first 5 features are almost all of them are the same. They're just copy, cut, delete, split. You can just do them with commands as I showed you earlier. So you Control B cut, and then to delete you just click backspace, and then to copy you just click Control C, and to copy Control V so that you can copy your clips as many times as you want. And then there is edit, which actually does some cool stuff. So the first one is freeze, as you can see, and this allows you to create a frozen frame. So as you can see, the video is playing, then it stops on this exact frame for 3 seconds, and then it goes forward once again. You can reduce this, increase this. And then there is also reverse, which reverses the clip from the last frame to the first one. There is mirror, which flips it horizontally, as you can see. And then we have crop ratio, which allows you to crop a certain part of the clip, as you can see, which is usually more useful for images than actual videos. And then there are also some other features. The main one that I want to show you is extract audio. This allows you to, as you can see, extract the audio, and it divides the timeline in 2 parts, as you can see. So there is the video part, where all of the videos are going to go, which is above, and then there is the audio track, which is where all of the audios are going to go. As you can see, it's below. And this is an important concept which goes to any editing software. You can mute your clips right here, as you can see, so muting the audio. You can hide clips so that they are not seen, and then you can lock tracks so that, as you can see, you cannot do anything to this track. I'm clicking, but nothing happens. And same here, which basically doesn't allow me to do anything on that. And that's basically all of it for the basic features of the timeline, the player panel, and the import. And now let's talk about the inspector a bit. I'm not going to go too in depth because we're going to talk about this later when we are actually in action recreating shorts. But basically, this tool allows you to have some transform settings, so you can scale up and scale down, as you can see. You can move your clip to the right or to the left. As you can see, you can do it either with on-screen controls or by typing a number here, for example, 1000, as you can see. And you can do the same with height, as you can see, you just move it upwards. And then you can rotate this clip by whatever degrees you want. And then we have blend, which allows you to control the opacity, as you can see, so how much of the clip is actually showing. Then we have stabilize, which is going to stabilize your camera movement. However, it's not that effective. I don't suggest you to use it. And then we have some pro features, which I'm not going to go into. And then we have motion blur. So let's quickly compare 2 tracks with motion blur and without. So let's take a look at this one without motion blur. As you can see, this is how it looks like. Meanwhile, if I hide it and I show the one with motion blur, as you can see, there is a bit of blur on the ends because they're just moving, as you can see. And as you can see, there is motion blur all over the place, even right here. As you can see, there is motion blur on the ends. Meanwhile, if I look right here, there isn't. And you can, of course, control how much motion blur you want. That's up to you. And then there is the canvas, which is only available for the clips on the main track. And you can go right here, for example, click on blur and choose this one. And if you now, as you can see, scale down this clip, you're going to have that blurred version in the background like so. It's useful when you have some wider clips that you put in the middle and then you use a canvas to cover the black screen in the background. So that's how it looks like. And I'll now scale it back and remove the canvas. And if you have some other clips, for example, I've imported 2 frames. One is yellow, one is blue, as you can see. If I go on the yellow one, as you can see, I'm going to have this layer function instead of the canvas. And if I click one, it's going to go below the blue layer because the blue layer goes on 2. And if I put the blue layer on 1, as you can see, the yellow is going to go on 2, and that's how layers work. So if I now put a red clip as well, as you can see, this is going to be layer 3. And if I put it on layer 1, now the third layer is the yellow one, as you can see, because it's the one above. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to layering clips. And these are all of the basic functions that you're going to find here. You also have this remove background. If you click on auto removal, you're going to remove the background from your video so that you can put stuff behind the guy that is talking, as you can see. It's not 100% perfect, but it works really, really well. You can also add strokes, as you can see, maybe like this one. If you like, you can change the size, the color, all of this cool stuff. And then there is also chroma key, which allows you to remove a certain color from an image. So for example, if I don't want this white, as you can see, I can remove it from my frame. And it works really well with green screens. That's how you remove green screens. And that's what this feature is good for, green screens mainly. And then we have the mask feature, which allows you to cut certain parts of the clip in certain ways that you may like, as you can see. It's a really powerful feature. And then we have a part about color grading and retouching the skin tones. I'm not going to go into that. I'll do it maybe once we talk about color grading. And then once you are done with the video part, we have the audio part. I'll click on recover audio so that I get my audio back. And as you can see, I can lower the volume, make the volume higher. I can fade the audio in so that, as you can see, this black thing appears. I can fade it out, as you can see. I can normalize the loudness so that the voice talks at the same volume throughout the whole clip. And then I can reduce the background noise. There is also a section on speed, which allows you to create, as you can see, faster or slower clips. And there is also the curve, as you can see, which we are not going to really go into. And then we have animation, which allows you to add animations to your clip. For example, I could add this shake effect, and as you can see, this is what happens, which is pretty cool. There are also some smoother effects, such as a fade in, for example. As you can see, it slowly fades in, and you can do it for the out as well. And without anything further to do, now you know the basics. Let's go ahead and start editing the first video. You learn everything else that is required meanwhile we edit.